Welcome everybody to the Real Debate. I'm delighted to have Nicole Chapman with us today, and we'll be talking about leaders of tomorrow. Welcome, Nicole, first of all.
Thank you very much. Thank you for asking me, Ian.
No, you're very welcome. So a bit of background about Nicole. Nicole's background is education. She's had 46 years in education and recently retired. Born in France and partly educated in France. Latterly has been head teacher for a number of schools, but most recently the girls' grammar school in Chelmsford. I should give it its correct title, really, shouldn't I? The county...
Chelmsford County High School for Girls.
There we go. And you became head of that school in 2007 and retired in 2019.
Exactly.
And in fact, my wife, Hazel, worked for you for, I think, about 7 years, I believe.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Wonderful relationship we had.
Indeed. Apart from being the head of the school, you're also joint president of the Association for State Girls, the ASGS.
For a while, yes. Yeah.
From 2013 to 2015. And you were also the part of the steering committee for the Grammar School Heads Association, GSHA. You have a passion for empowering girls to believe in themselves and to be ambitious for the future. And as head teacher of a high-performing selective school, you have articulated this vision, developing the leaders of tomorrow in the belief that every single girl has the potential to lead in whichever field she chooses. Mm-hmm. So, well, first of all, you're very welcome. I always start off with the icebreaking question of what do you like doing when you're not working? Well, of course, you've retired now, but so what do you like to do to recharge your batteries?
Well, I play a lot of tennis, and I actually, on a good week, I can play 5 times.
Wow.
Which is well, it's just fantastic to be able to get out there because I play outside, and to just be sociable because I play social tennis, obviously, and to recharge batteries in terms of thinking of this little ball rather than think of anything that could be of concern.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I know you like traveling. What's the most inspiring place you've traveled to?
Well, we were very lucky recently in 2019, in fact, soon after I retired, in spending 3 weeks in India. And I have to say, out of all the places I have visited in the world, this to me was the most significant in terms of helping me take a different perspective on life. What I found in India was an incredible amount of kindness, humility, and I was so impressed with the fact that even the poorest people who were living in the street would just be prepared to give you a smile if you looked at them. Kevin would take photographs and they would willingly smile at him. And I thought that was really significant because there's a huge humanity in India, which has its challenges. And the contrast, obviously, between those amazing monuments and buildings we were seeing and the poverty we saw in the street was breathtaking. But as I said, what impressed me the most really was the people and how they were reacting to, obvious visitors. I mean, obviously, we were visitors.
What was the highlight of your trip to India?
Probably, well, a personal one was visiting an elephant sanctuary. Kevin had arranged that for us near Jaipur, and we were given literally an elephant to look after for an afternoon, obviously with his minder, not on our own. And the beautiful thing about an elephant is that it likes to communicate and to relate. And the first thing I was asked to do was to take my sunglasses off because the elephant needed to see my eyes.
Right.
And that was really significant to me to see this huge creature who was friendly and was relating to us really. The other, obviously, the Taj Mahal is just so stunning. And I was very lucky to be taken there. Kevin actually wasn't well that morning, so I went on my own with our guide. And we were there at 7 o'clock in the morning. And to see the sunrise and to see this fantastic mausoleum, which represents the love that he had for his, or one of his wives, is just beyond anything else that I have seen in the world. And I have traveled to China, other parts of Africa, and obviously lots of places in Europe, but that was just really significant to me.
I've been to the Taj Mahal. I went there in 2013, 12, 13, I think it was. It's had a very significant impact on me too. Yes. Beautiful place. So just going to Chelmsford County High School for girls, one of the top performing schools in the country. How do you think that's been achieved?
Well, I can't take all the credit in a sense, because the school was created was founded in 1906 and actually opened in 1907. And that was a decision by the county at the time to give opportunities for able girls to be educated in an environment which would stimulate their intellectual abilities. And over the decades, and obviously for a whole century, this was nurtured and fostered by great teams of teachers and head teachers. But when I arrived in 2007, taking over this school, knowing that there were expectations very much in terms of high results, I personally felt that wasn't enough. Results are not enough, and education is about much more than that. So very quickly, with the team of the senior leadership team, the governors, the rest of the teaching team, we had a day away from teaching to reflect on the sort of student we wanted to turn out. So not just students with top results, but students with something else. So the characteristics we identified were consistent with the vision of developing the leaders of tomorrow, because we did very much feel that every single child who comes into that school, and into obviously most schools in the country, has the potential to do something significant, to lead in a small area or in something more significant at local, national or international level. And we have examples of that in the history of the school. So, I mean, I was personally partly inspired by the philosophy of the International Baccalaureate, which has a learner profile. And the staff worked together to produce a list of those characteristics which have similarity with the learner profile of the International Baccalaureate. And those characteristics have, in a sense, driven the work of the school in the classroom and beyond the classroom. So it has given opportunities for students to reflect on how they are developing towards those characteristics. You know, I mean, I can remind you what they are. I have to remember myself of the list, but we wanted them to be articulate, principled, and it's so important for a leader to be principled, knowledgeable, but that almost goes without saying, but also creative. It's really important that a curriculum embraces different types of subjects to develop the abilities of the students. And creativity is really important, and not just in the art subject, but also in the way that the students think, because having creative powers does help you lead in difficult times. And we've seen this, haven't we, with the pandemic. We've seen that leaders have struggled to think outside the box, because they have been faced with something unprecedented. And this is where the creativity, in addition to obviously the scientific knowledge, etc., have been crucial in helping the world cope with the pandemic. So creativity is really important. Also, we want our students to, or we wanted our students to be inquiring, in other words, to ask questions. And this is where teachers are challenged by students. You know, they want to know why, they want to pursue ideas beyond what may be in the curriculum or, you know, the exam curriculum. They need to be reflective. So it's absolutely important to allow yourself to make mistakes, for instance, and to reflect upon those, but also to reflect on the successes and to learn from that. And finally, the characteristics which the girls used to tease me about is resilience. I used to say to them, you know, it's really important to be resilient, because this is the strength that will enable you to face anything. Anyway, in assemblies, whenever the word resilience would come up in an assembly, there would be a little giggle around the assembly, because they thought that was really important. And I've had to demonstrate this myself in terms of the disappointment I had whilst I was at Chelmsford, in terms of the International Baccalaureate not taking off as well as I had hoped, and then finding out that the government was not prepared to fund it properly. Therefore, we had to give it up, which was very sad.
Well,
anyway, I've said quite a lot here.
Well, I know that as part of your education, you were educated in a, can I say, single-sex school? Is that allowed? Am I allowed to use that terminology?
I think you're allowed to say that, yes.
Yeah, I know. I have to be so careful with terminology these days. Do you think that was important for you, not being distracted by boys whilst you were in the early stages of your education?
Well, I think so. I personally, well, I was it was a boarding school, a girls' boarding school in central France, so very traditional. But we really did focus on what we were learning, and boys came later. Now, the government is not in favour of girls' schools or single-sex schools, because obviously there are boys' schools as well. And in fact, you're not allowed to open a new single-sex school, whether it's boys or girls, which I think is rather sad, because, as you know, there's a lot being said in the press about the difficulties that some teenagers, adolescents are having, coping with being adolescents in a mixed environment. And we know that girls and boys can be on the receiving end of rather unpleasant behaviour, which does distract them from being educated.
Of course it does. Yeah.
I don't want to take the position that it was fine for me, therefore it has to be fine for everyone else. That's a very narrow view of life. But whilst girls and boys need to learn to live together, to work together, in the purely academic environment, I do believe that they're both sets of, both sexes benefit from being able to concentrate away from each other.
Interesting. So of all the achievements that you've been part of over the years, what's the one you're most proud of, and why?
Well, I guess having had a French upbringing, I'm actually quite proud of where I got to. Getting to Chelmsford to lead that sort of school with a foreign background, I'm very proud of that. And I'm very proud of what I think I have made of the school in those 12 years I've been there. I've been able to grow the school from 4 forms of entry to 6 forms of entry. I've badgered government for funding to improve the facilities.
Yes, you raised what, £10 million, didn't you?
That's right. Over the years, that's the figure we managed to raise from government, which was no mean feat, I have to say. And I didn't do it on my own. Obviously, I was working with my team, but because what that has achieved is two things really. It's grown the school and given, therefore, more opportunities for girls to be educated in that environment. But as well as that, it's developed the facilities. When the school didn't have a sports hall, the school was still managing a practically derelict building, which had been built as a temporary building in the 50s. So in the 1950s. So the facilities that there are now are just much more appropriate for this 21st century. So it's a package, isn't it? I'm proud of this package.
Oh, that's very good. So which leaders, alive and maybe past, have most inspired you? And what is it about their leadership that you identify with?
Well, the people who've led in the face of adversity are the people I suppose I've learned the most from, because being in positions such as, and you were asking me what I was reading, and I read a mixture of things, and one particular one I've just really started reading is the latest Obama book. You know this one?
Yeah, I've read it. Yeah, it's very good.
And I think, he is someone who, well, he's the first Black leader of a country which has had its ups and downs in terms of being racist, etc. So I very much admire him. I can't say that there is anyone in particular that has inspired me, but certain actions from different people have inspired me. Having to face a difficult situation and coming out of it with something that has been positive is something that I personally have picked up from various people. So I can't really identify anyone in particular. Oh, this is my role model. I want to be like that person. Also, in my professional life, I have worked with and for different types of people, and from each one, I've drawn a nugget of information that has probably made me what I was myself as a leader. So you learn what to do, but you also learn what not to do. You think, gosh, I wouldn't do it like this. So I'm not giving you a specific name, but I'm telling you I've learned from lots of different people.
You can learn as much from people's mistakes as you can from the things that they do right.
Yes, definitely.
I know you had this gentleman at the school, Ken Robinson, education legend and speaker, and he talks about the relevance of developing the creative potential of young people. What are your own views on his approach and his views? For anybody that doesn't know Ken Robinson, I would strongly recommend. He does an interesting TED talk, which people should watch. It's really interesting. What inspires you about him?
Obviously, he died in 2020, and he was only 70, which is what I'm going to be this year. So it's very sad because he really tried to influence education, both in this country and then in the States. And I fully support his ideas in terms of the diversity element of education. And he challenged the narrowness of the education system, particularly post-16. Studying 3 subjects in the world today is insufficient. So the diversity, also he was someone who said every child needs to be treated as an individual, and that has to be the way education is. But also, I think inspiring young people to be curious and teaching them how to be creative. So those sort of encapsulate, in a way, the way that we have worked, or that the school works at Chelmsford, and the way most strong education leaders want their education institutions to be. And sadly, he did not have a voice that was loud enough for governments to really take on board what he was saying. And his TED Talks are still obviously around for people to listen to. And he is really inspirational, or he was inspirational.
And you've had a number of inspirational people come to the school. Who stands out of people that you'd want to have back at some point?
Well, we've had different types of people speaking at the school, in terms of, we've had politicians, we've had scientists, we've had people with ethnic origins that were not, white British. And I can't pick out one other than to say one of our former governors, somebody called Mitra Janes, she leads in terms of diversity. She leads, and she was really inspiring to the students. And I'm told that she came again today, this year rather. So I don't want to pick out any other names, but Mitra is somebody who's got a high profile in diversity. Look for her on LinkedIn, and you'll see that she's working very hard to make people aware of, in a sense, what do we have inside us that can make us not be racist, but not see the true person beyond the face.
Is she on? Has she done any TED Talk?
I'm not aware.
Public events,
I'm not aware, but she's come to the school many a time. The only problem I've got at the moment, as somebody who's going to be 70, is I keep forgetting names. That's why I can't give you a list of names. I can tell you the impact people have had. What was very important too, you see, as a school, is that the ethnic profile of the school changed dramatically over the years. And it was important to present to the girls role models who were those that they could identify with more obviously because of their own ethnic backgrounds. So we had some really inspiring people there.
Now, I have a personal interest in technology and material science, etc. And over recent years, we've witnessed some interesting influences of technology on all of our lives. How do you think this will impact on young people in the future and help them adapt to the fast changing digital landscape, given things like big data, artificial intelligence, robots, etc., and also, the influence of social media? What's your view on all of that stuff?
Well, we can't ignore what is happening. We can't ignore the power of big data. And the big data power influences our life so positively that we have to accept that this is the way forward. So for instance, to think of the way big data is being used now, through sort of logarithms to help in medicine, for instance, that has to be something that young people learn to respect and to use. So I think at the basic level of education, it's really important that young people look at it as a positive, but also are aware of the dangers. And this is where social media can be dangerous. And we at the school, we teach the girls to ensure that their digital footprint is going to be a positive one, which they're going to be proud of. Whoever
not regret at some later date. Yeah, because employers do look at what you posted on Facebook and
Absolutely.
Instagram and so on, don't they?
Yes, they do. And so they should, because that can reveal a side of people's personality, psyche, and way of life, which can be significant in terms of whether it's appropriate for the role that they are applying for or not. So young people are facing a world that's quite different from the world that I faced as a teenager. I mean, all my influences were through books, really, not through media. It's fantastic. I mean, when you think of the situation with the pandemic, for instance, had we been in this pandemic 50 years ago, people would have felt even more isolated, even more unaware, uninformed. So we can't underestimate the power of technology in that sense. Also, we're all living longer, and it is thanks to technology. Medicine relies on scientific knowledge to help us live longer. So we have developed very high expectations of life generally. I think we need to be thankful to the scientists who use the technology in terms of scientific research to help us live longer. So incredibly important and cannot be ignored. And parents need to understand that power, and they need to understand how to support their children in terms of managing that power.
So the impact that the speed at which we can communicate now and to influence outcomes has never been like this, has it? You know, the influence we can have over politicians en masse is extraordinary. Obviously, with COP26 a couple of weeks away. That's about a week away, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, the influence that we can all have on politicians, not just politicians, but people that will ultimately make decisions, is extraordinary, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I spent some time with students a couple of weeks ago at the school, part of the eco committee.
Yes.
And the enthusiasm, and they now know that they can actually put a message out there and influence people.
Yes.
And can be heard, which certainly that wasn't possible when I was their age.
Absolutely. And it's important for this to remain positive. However, I am troubled by what happened to David Amos, for instance. I'm troubled by the fiercely negative contact that some female politicians receive, as well as male politicians. So teaching young people to respect is really important. And whatever we put out there should be respectful, even if it expresses a disagreement, in my opinion.
Yes, it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's so easy just to sort of quickly type something and the damage that's done. Without
particularly receiving emails from people that have been written sort of in the middle of the night. You think, well, how many of us think clearly in the middle of the night? I would like to be typing something in the middle of the night personally.
So what's so now you've got a bit more time on your hands, so what's still on your bucket list, things that you want to do?
Well, I'm learning Italian.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
I am, and at the moment I'm just doing this through Duolingo, which is a really is very accessible scheme, which I find really quite good. Kevin and I have lots of travel plans. We've got 3 weeks booked for South Africa in March next year. We want to go to South America. We want to go. So a lot of travel plans, which we must obviously put in place as soon as we can. I'm also now a trustee of a school, which means I'm keeping a hand in education, albeit from a distance.
Yeah.
And spending more time, but quality time, so doing more reading, because the frenzy of life can, make you forget the important things, such as the friendships you have.
Yeah.
So that's an important aspect of, I think, of having time. It's taken time to get used to having time.
So you're reading the Obama book at the moment?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
And
but I tend to read a mixture of things. I read a book in France when we were there, my parents, a book they had about the Queen, which had been written by a French journalist. And then I've started reading this one, which is another book about, because she's somebody I admire, I have to say, this one here. I think she's just an amazing woman. And the more you read about her personal life, the more you understand the major challenges that she's had.
Yeah.
And people will be cynical about her in a way, well, she's the Queen, she's well looked after. Well, yes, but she's also been quite a powerful leader in the background in a quiet way. And I think she's really somebody to admire. I'm reading a French novel, which will not be translated, but I've also read this book here. And I was fortunate on Tuesday in meeting Sam Hepburn. She came to give a talk to the U3A in Chelmsford. They had a special day. And she's a fascinating woman. She's got a fascinating background. And this book, I could not put it down. And I like to occasionally read books that I can't put down, because obviously you can easily put down a serious book like the Obama book, I guess.
Yeah.
But so I really want to speak up for Sam Hepburn. She is of mixed heritage, and she writes fantastic books. And her books are all they will generate from something that she's come across. So it's not a personal. It's not autobiographical at all, but something in the news or something an interesting story that she's heard. And this one is, I recommend it. It's a really good read.
Well, funny enough, I've been reading, I think I've got me, Diane, they're all upstairs, I think, by a French author called Antoine. He's written, hang on, let me just Google it. He's written The President's House. Not
Saint-Exupéry. Is it an older?
He's written a number of their short stories, but I love them. It's great escapism. Hazel, what's the name of the author of The President's Hat? Antoine Laurent. Do you know him?
Antoine Laurent. No, he's a
great. Short stories that they're you can read them in a couple of days.
Okay.
They're really good. They're very well written. Usually a good twist at the end. Good escapism.
So he writes in French, does he? You reading it?
They are in French, but they've been translated into English.
Oh, and I'll look out for them.
So
is he a modern author?
Is he what? Sorry.
A modern author? Is he alive today?
Yes, he's alive today. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he's a journalist. I think that's his day job as a journalist.
Okay. So how did you come across him?
I don't know.
Did someone recommend him?
Possibly. I think somebody recommended him to Hazel. And I picked up a book. I'll read this. And got glued to it.
Well, I think Hazel will like Sam Hepburn.
Yeah,
Sam Hepburn. Like this book called Gone Before.
Gone Before by Sam Hepburn. No, he doesn't know that one. I have to add that one to the list.
We have shared books, Hazel and I, and we enjoy similar things.
Well, I love reading, as you know. It's great escapism. Well, look, Nicole, lovely to speak with you. Thank you for your time, and you're fascinating and inspiring.
Well, thank you very much.
It's good to know you. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for asking me, and I hope that anyone who listens to this finds a nugget of information that can be inspiring to them.
I hope so. I hope so.